This is their 10th game. 3 plus 2, whoever wins goes through to the round 2 of the World Cup. We have a Sicilian bishop b5 check, takes, knight takes, white castles, Xu Yinglun plays e6, queen comes up to e2, and now b3. The rook is attacked, c3 is played. This is all opening theory. Knight e7, he hits the center with d4. And you can see Xu Yinglun has stopped a bit. Meanwhile, Aydin has so much more time on the clock. You want all of that time later when the game gets critical. Now, be careful. e5 can trap your bishop. So, Xu Yinglun plays his knight to c6, controls e5. Aydin, still in his prep it seems, plays his rook to d1, defends the pawn here, maybe aiming for d5 if it is possible. Both of them have indulged in such a tense match against each other with so many draws and blows being traded. And finally now we have come down to this point of 3 minutes plus 2 seconds increment where whoever wins goes through. Bishop f4 played. Now d6 is a weakness. How do you deal with it? One way is to play d5. Just push the pawn forward. The other way is to actually take on d4. Take on d4. Let's say you take, and then play d5. These are the few options that you have at your disposal. But if you take on d4, you must be ready that white makes an intermediate move, which is to take on d6. But look at the complications. Take here, take this, attacks the rook, I play here. You take this rook, I push c2, attacking this rook and this rook. Oh, he takes on d4. And now Aydin is ready to recapture. But if you recapture back, there are two moves. One is d5 as we just discussed, or the other is even to move the knight to b6. And so he gets tempted by taking this pawn. This is a very interesting decision made by Aydin Suleymanli, very talented youngster from Azerbaijan. You must know that he's actually the winner of Aeroflot Open A category. e5 pushed. So he makes this intermediate move, intermediate decision to hit the bishop. Now the bishop is attacked. Also the rook is attacked, so the natural move is to go back, and then white will capture this pawn on c3 and will have some good amount of space in the position. So bishop, yes, e7 played. The only worrying thought here for Xu Yinglun is that he's very low on time already. Bishop takes, and now comes a critical decision. Do you take with the pawn or with the rook? Now taking with the rook seems very logical because you're pinning the knight. However, after queen e7, the other rook comes. The rook comes here and defends it. This pawn on e5 is slightly weak. And so taking with the pawn is actually the best decision here. You also get a passer. Aydin takes with the pawn. Well done. Great decision making in such a high stressful game. Rook c8 played, hitting the knight here. And now white is very slightly better, but the game is still quite complicated. Xu Yinglun down to 1 minute 20 seconds while Aydin has still a solid 2 minutes and 20 seconds on hand. What does he do next is the question. What are the plans that white can go for? One of the plans can always be to push your h-pawn down the board. This is a very logical way to play. The other idea is to bring your rook on the open file or get your knight to e4. The knight is very well placed here. Why? Because firstly, it stops the queen from coming out here. He plays it. And secondly, you can never kick this knight off because the e6 pawn could get weak. Queen a5 played. a3, very nice move. Now, if you get a chance to play b4 and then remove this knight on c5, on d7 with knight c5, that would be epic. Because the only person who is actually stopping this pawn from moving ahead is this knight on d7. If you can remove it, then you are very much in control of the game. I really liked how Aydin very quickly played a3. Just shows how good he is. And until now, both players have played a pretty accurate game of chess. But Xu Yinglun has to do something about his time. He's down to 40 seconds now. But there's a 2-second increment. However, in the end, with the pressure building up, it won't be easy. He goes knight c e5 and he tells Aydin that whenever you play b4, your own c4 square will get a bit weak. So do you want to do that? It's a question to be asked. Also, you are threatening to take on f3. Let's say I go b4, you take here. I take with the queen. You can centralize your queen. So Aydin says, I don't want to take, and he moves his knight to d4. Now this creates even further complications in the position. Look at those two white knights in the center. Queen b6. Two options now. Push the pawn to b4 or push your pawn to a4 and a5. These are the two ideas left for Aydin Suleymanli. He is now having also quite less time on the clock, but still more than his opponent. But I like how calm he is. He goes a4. Good move. Now, the idea of a4 is that you want to play a5, and suddenly the queen is running out of squares. It may have a square on b4, but notice rook a4 might just trap the queen. So these are the problems that you are facing. a4 has been played, and you go a6. Pawn up to a6 has been played, and now a5, hitting the queen. The queen comes back. This is now in white's control. This entire game is firmly in white's control. I guess b4 is still a bit committal for Aydin, because yes, he gets c4, c5 square, but he loses the c4 square. But what to do next? He has to figure a way out to continue. He goes queen e1. Maybe he wants to put his queen on b4 and put pressure down here. b6 played by Xu Yinglun. A good decision, because he was anyway feeling a bit cramped. With this move, he's trying to lash out a bit. But notice that his a6 pawn is now weakened. So Aydin can actually take. Or he can make a very calm move, which is queen e2, hitting here. And then the a6 pawn would be weak. But in such a tense game, can you find that move? Oh, he finds it. But b5 is played. Now this is not great, because the a6 pawn has become a permanent weakness. And I love again this next move, clearing the back rank. Queen h4 played. The way in which Xu Yinglun makes his move does scare off the opponent. But right now, positionally, white is completely dominating. Aydin plays his queen up to e3, but now he's also down to 16 seconds. Xu Yinglun down to his last 10 seconds. Now it's a question of nerves. Both the players moving very quickly. The queen is looking at the rook in some way, so you have to be careful. Pawn up to f4. Nice move. The knight has to move away. And then b4 now is very good move. He can push his pawn to b4, but Aydin is waiting. What is he doing? He's down to 5 seconds. Maybe he was going to blunder. He goes knight f3. Queen f5 attacking f4 pawn. He goes g3, but now the h3 pawn is hanging. No, e5 played. Pawn takes. Knight takes e5. He takes here. Black's position looking better than before. Now the d6 pawn is still strong, but the white king is weak. Check comes in. Rook d2 played. Rook goes back. Both players down to their last few seconds. He goes rook f2. Fantastic. White has now coordinated himself again and is fine. But the position is around about even. Who's going to win this and go to the next round? So much at stake. Rook d8. Is the d6 pawn a strength or weakness? Knight comes out. Queen attacks this knight. And knight g4. Oh, he's given the knight, but now knight c5. The queen is attacked, and also the knight on g4 is hanging. This is completely winning. He blundered with knight g4. And now queen f6 played by Xu Yinglun. But this endgame is completely losing, because we told that the a6 pawn is a weakness. And that is exactly what's happening now. White is not materially up right now, but the a pawn is monstrous. You can see that a6 coming in, and now a7 threatened, a8 threatened. It is game over. If the knight moves, b5 hangs, and Aydin has won. Look at that relief on his face. From behind comes the president of Azerbaijan Chess Federation, Mahir Mamadov, and greets Aydin for that game. Both the players are completely tired. They've played 10 games against each other, but in the end, it was the youngster, Aydin Suleymanli, who goes through to the second round. Heart goes out for Xu Yinglun, who played so well, but that's the nature of World Cup. It is so stressful. Well done, Aydin.